What's going on, everyone? So today, Tuesday, August 5th, Apple released iOS 26 Developer Beta 5. Alongside iOS 26 Developer Beta 5, we also got iPadOS 26 Developer Beta 5, macOS Tahoe 26 Developer Beta 5, tvOS 26 Developer Beta 5, watchOS 26 Developer Beta 5, and visionOS 26 Developer Beta 5. So I'm installing the update right now. It was about 1.99 gigabytes on my iPhone SE 2nd generation. This is the secondary device that I'm using to beta test. So after this installs, we'll go ahead and take a look at all the new features. So this beta only took me about 1 to 2 minutes to download on my iPhone. Then it took about 18 minutes to prepare, which is kind of long compared to the older betas. It seemed to do it quicker, but then it took only 10 minutes to install, which isn't that long. Now keep in mind, I did say it was 1.99 gigabytes to download on my iPhone SE 2nd generation. However, I see a lot of people online showing 10, 11, even 12 gigabytes, upwards of 12 gigabytes on newer devices, but this is an older device. It seems as if the newer the device, the larger the download size. So that can vary quite greatly, especially considering what beta you're upgrading from, or if you're installing it new, or if it's the developer beta or public beta. Of course, this is developer beta 5. So there are no major changes to liquid glass this time around in iOS 26 beta 5. This applies to iPadOS 26 Beta 5, macOS Tahoe 26 Beta 5, visionOS 26, watchOS 26, all the other versions as well. There's just not many changes. There is one change though, which I'll show right after this clip, but I'll just let you see it right now, what it looks like on screen. This is what it looks like in Beta 5 on the right, and then Beta 4 on the left. You can see there's just not a huge change here. So that's what it looks like in the music app. Now I'll show you what it looks like on the lock screen briefly. Again, beta 4 on the left, beta 5 on the right. The only change to liquid glass this time around is the UI, like the navigation down here. So usually when you scroll up just a little bit, or at least in previous betas, you scroll up just a little bit, this will expand like this and it will show all your different tabs. What that is when it's collapsed, you know, if you're in music, for example, it just shows now playing, the home button or the current tab you're on, and then an instant button to go to the search feature. Now you have to scroll all the way up for it to expand now. So it kind of follows that whole theme of not being too intrusive and it just kind of getting out of the way so you can see more of your screen. You can always still expand this by tapping this home button down here. Of course, that reflects the current tab you're on, whatever that is. Another change I did find with the toolbar in some apps, especially with the liquid glass design, is when you're switching between tabs, mostly when you're highlighting or you're tapping and holding with your finger over the toolbar. So you can see if I tap and hold here and it starts to move, and you could see everything in that bubble is red, or depending on the app, maybe a different color. Like in files, it'll be blue, for example. Now before, when you would do this, say if you're switching between home and new in the music app in the toolbar, you just swipe your finger along here, it would remain selected home until you fully entered the new, until the bubble here fully entered the new tab. Now everything in that bubble is red, so you can see that there as the old icon moves out of the bubble, it returns to being gray or black, or however you like to describe it. And so the same here, you can see as I move my finger, maybe I skipped right to tab 4 here, you can see the bubble move through the tabs in between as well. You can see that right there. So it's a very nice touch. It's small, but it is noticeable, and it is a nice touch in my opinion. Just a small quality of life change here, but now the remove icons when you're in edit mode in the control center, now those have the liquid glass effect. In beta 4, they have just a solid white or light gray background. Now those are more transparent. They look like glass with that whole liquid glass theme. It just aligns better with that. You can see that here. Here's what that same interface looks like on the home screen when you're in the edit mode. You can see those remove icons with of course, these have liquid glass as well. Unlike in iOS 18, they don't have that light gray white background. They're just glass. They're transparent or more translucent maybe. So there's a couple new animations that look really nice. One is with the lock screen, the passcode screen where you enter your passcode. You can see as the menu slides up, you can definitely see that new animation there. You can see all the numbers sort of bounce up as they go up. It's definitely a very nice animation there. And then there's also a new animation in the control center when you're switching between pages. Now, if you switch between pages using the slider on the right, there's not as much of a change here. But if you switch changes by just swiping between the pages with your finger, you can definitely see the new animation here. And it's that same sort of bounce effect as you see in the lock screen. You can see it on screen there. It just looks pretty nice in my opinion. When you're viewing Wi-Fi options in the control center, there's a new Wi-Fi glyph for secure networks. So for secure networks, it will now show a lock icon over the Wi-Fi signal strength glyph. So now this is an easier way to distinguish between secure and unsecure networks. There's no changes in the full Wi-Fi settings, just in the control center menu for Wi-Fi. Another UI change is in the Safari app. When you're viewing the tab viewer, you can see all your tabs on like a tile view in a page. And like that main group there that's like ungrouped, it would be in the center. The private group would be off to the left, and that would cause it, especially on smaller devices, to run off the screen, so you can see for yourself how they changed that. And you can definitely see it well if you have multiple tab groups. You can definitely see it there, how that sort of works. There's a new camera setting. So you go to settings, then camera, then under the heading mode switching, you'll see the new option classic mode switching. This is off by default, and for the description, it says reverse the direction of mode switching. So this reversed the change, and I believe last beta 4, where your scrolling would like naturally correspond to where you swipe your fingers. Now that's still the case, but if you turn on classic mode switching, it will change like normal. I personally prefer it this way, and a lot of people on the internet did as well, so it's good that they added this just as a personal preference. Also, the AirDrop icon is updated here in iOS 26 beta 4, and again, you can see beta 4, what it looks like there on the left, and then what it looks like now on beta 5 on the right. And then I'll show it both in light and dark mode icons as well. Now, this icon has been in UI kit for a while, I believe ever since iOS 26 was first announced a couple months ago, WWDC. Now it is implemented and it is here in beta 5. The app icon for the Apple Games app was updated here in iOS 26 beta 5. You can see it on screen. It seems like it has more of that liquid glass effect to it. It looks more gray than white. It seems a little more like 3D. Some parts of it, like the center of this rocket ship here, are brighter, or the edges are not necessarily darker, but maybe more translucent. Again, following that liquid glass design. This is interesting because we don't see this with too many other apps, like even like messages and phone. Even these icons, the glyphs in these apps, they still look relatively the same across the board. They just seem mostly white without much translucency. This looks a lot more translucent. If you put something like messages and games side by side, you can see that Games app definitely does look different here. There's what it looks like in dark. Of course, you also have clear icons, and these aren't new, by the way. These are just some options here. I don't see as much of a difference there. It's probably changed just a little bit. It's definitely more noticeable in light or dark. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. There's a new What's New splash screen in Apple Music when you first open Apple Music after updating to beta 5. It says What's New in Apple Music, and it says Auto Mix. That says, like a DJ, Auto Mix seamlessly transitions from one song into the next. Live translation and pronunciation, understand the lyrics, and sing along across languages. Pin music to your library. That description says elevate your most loved music to the top of your library for easy access. And replay, check out your month by month and year-end stats easily in-app. And then at the bottom, there's a privacy disclaimer. There's also a new What's New splash screen in the Notes app. So it says What's New in Notes. Notes on Apple Watch. Access all of your iCloud notes from your Apple Watch. That means that there's now an Apple Watch app for notes. 2, an adaptive toolbar. Your toolbar icons will adjust based on what you're doing in your notes. Again, that liquid glass effect where toolbar collapses depending on how you're scrolling. That's in Notes too, depending on how you're typing. And 3, markdown, export, and import. Save and download your notes as markdown files. So none of these are new features in beta 5, but the splash screen explaining the new features is new, just like in the Music app. Interestingly enough, I wasn't able to get this on my device, but I did see it online. There's also a new low battery alert on iPhones with the dynamic island. It's now larger. It actually shows an icon with the low battery. Then below it, it also says tap to turn on low power mode, so that part of it is new as well. iOS 26 beta 5 code suggests an Apple Watch Ultra with a display resolution of 422 by 514. Now, a screen resolution for an Apple Watch this size doesn't exist yet, so this suggests that maybe the new Apple Watch Ultra coming out later this year may get an increased screen resolution. This may not necessarily mean in a bigger case, but maybe smaller bezels. So many online have linked this to the Apple Watch Ultra 3, which is expected to be announced this September. On newer iPhones with Apple Intelligence, if you have the adaptive power feature enabled, you will now get a notification when adaptive power is in effect, and it will say adaptive power, iPhone is adjusting a performance to help extend your battery life. So it will now let you know when this feature is actively being used. This means that some background tasks will be paused in order to help extend your battery life. So this just lets you know that that may be happening currently on your iPhone. There were many more resolved issues in the release notes, and I'll have those linked in the description so you can view them for yourself. One of them having to do with a specific bug on iPhone 11 specifically, where you organize apps and folders. A visual bug there was fixed. Another bug was fixed having to do with web page apps failing to load web page data with the add to home screen button. There were a couple of other resolved issues, one with background assets, and a couple with Foundation Models framework. There's also a couple small new features of Foundation Models framework. There's a notable new feature where you can pair multiple Apple devices to your DualSense or DualSense Edge controller, that is a PlayStation 5 controller, and easily switch between them directly using the controller or Bluetooth settings. So this is a newly enabled feature with the DualSense controller, and now that is usable within iOS, so you can easily switch between an iOS device and another device. There's some other resolved issues having to do with game mode, health kits, one having to do with if on a device without a passcode, health data might become inaccessible when you reach the power off slider. So that one's fixed. Some more resolved issues when it comes to the lock screen, of course the glass tint color, photo wallpapers, some issues with the time clock, and then a couple other resolved issues in Mail, Swift Standard Library, Text Kit, and many small bug fixes with Wi-Fi awareness. So when should we expect iOS 26 Beta 6? So at this point, we should be seeing it next week. This is usually the point in the annual development cycle where we see new betas every week. So around August is when we start seeing new betas every week. Past 2 months, we've saw new betas every 2 weeks, but now we should be moving to a 1-week cycle. I would probably suggest next week, early next week, probably Monday or Tuesday, but recently they've been releasing betas on Tuesday a lot, so I think it would most likely be next Tuesday. You can't rule out Monday though, and it is possible that it will release next Wednesday as well, maybe even Thursday. That being said, for the public beta this week, public beta 2, that should be coming out, if I had to guess, Thursday. It usually comes out around 2 days after the developer beta. This is to make sure any critical bugs are squashed so that people don't experience them on their personal devices. That goes the same thing for next week after beta 6 releases. Public beta 3 should release 2, maybe 3 days at the latest after developer beta 6 releases. So that pretty much does it for today's beta release video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about all the new app icons, the small changes to the UI, the new animations, and then let me know, despite no changes this time, let me know what you guys think about liquid glass. Do you think they should change it more? Do you think there's some small things they should change here and there, or is it fine? Let me know what you think in the comments. Either way, I'll be doing a lot more videos regarding these beta releases and more in the world of Apple. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.